Cyndi Lauper was there, and Al Green was there, and taxpayers foot the bill. We've got 8 Biden and Obama vacations since the start of the year, and more are planned throughout the year. We got a great trip down to Florida, play golf with Tiger, $180,000 an hour to fly Air Force One. No worries for the Obamas. Let the rest of us eat cake as the White House remains closed to kids, school kids, and visitors. Dr. Marc Lamont Hill is back with us, and who never invites me to speak before his Columbia University Ivy League snooty class. And then we have A.J. Delgado of Mediaite with us. How are you?
Hi, Sean. Hey, Mark.
Be here. Good to be here. Good to see you. Good to hear you.
Yeah, you don't think there's a certain level of tone deafness in light of the fear, doom, gloom, closed White House? We have Memphis Soul Night at the White House.
I don't know if it's tone deafness. Not in this. I think in general, the Obama administration has been tone deaf, particularly the first administration. They just missed the mark on so many things.
No, I'm talking about spending. If all those predictions of doom and gloom are real, Mark, you would think the Obamas themselves would tone down their lifestyle that we're paying for.
I'm saying in general, when you make moves like certain moves in the midst of economic crisis or foreign policy crisis, the American people are like, wait a minute, we're in disaster mode, and the White House is celebrating. I think last night was a little different, but nevertheless, I don't think.
But it's not just last night.
How is it different, Mark?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One, I don't think that it's easy to throw a number like $180,000. I mean, that really is a drop in the bucket in the grand economic scheme of things.
I agree with you. The funding is only partially funded by the taxpayer, so sure, let's not get too bogged down in that, although we did obviously pay a huge amount for the Secret Service for that event, and they were citing that as the reason for cutting the White House tour. So I'd love to hear a good explanation for that. But putting aside what the taxpayers paid for last night's soiree, it's just insensitive, Mark. I mean, you have people who last night went to bed hungry, went to bed crying, and the Obamas are partying like it's 1999 at the White House, and it's just incredibly insensitive. This is where these Marie Antoinette let them eat cakes comparisons seem to have merit. This is why we hear them, because aside from being financially wrong and, getting bogged down in what it costs us, it's just insensitive to a populace that's struggling.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page, actually. I'm not defending the president's choice. My worry is that it becomes a distraction from the real financial issues, and I think some Americans who might not have full access to all the information suddenly think that the taxpayers just got hit with this astronomical bill that's undermining the economic progress of the nation. That's just not true. But you're right. It doesn't look good. I mean, if you take the economy out, just look at North Korea. I mean, there's enough reason last night to not have a party, whether it's bombs dropping or the threat of missile strikes or the threat of the effects of sequestration. There's lots of reasons not to party. I get that. I don't want that to be the distraction to the more fundamental concern, which is how can we put together an economic vision for the nation that actually moves us forward.
Well, let's look at the numbers. We got now the president upside down on the economy, 54% disapprove, CNN poll, 58% disapprove of his handling his record deficits. We got $6.5 trillion Obama new debt. We got 50 million Americans on food stamps, nearly double when he took office. We've got 1 in 5 children in poverty, and the list goes on, Mark. And 1 in 6 Americans in poverty, and 14 million Americans on permanent disability now, because that's the new form of welfare for many.
Well, if you look at the just to be clear on child poverty numbers and American poverty numbers, they've always been 1 in 5 is about the norm.
No, it's not the norm. No, it's not. We haven't seen numbers like this since the war on poverty in the 1960s and the Great Society.
That's not true. Child poverty numbers are the same under Clinton.
No, they were not.
But we disagree. We will. Why don't we pull the
number? The number of people getting food stamps now is up just shy of 20 million people since Barack Obama took office.
Yeah, I was speaking of child poverty. I just made a correction.
Okay, children in poverty now. We have literally the worst poverty rates since the 1940s.
And, Mark, also keep in mind when you're comparing poverty not to poverty during the Lyndon Johnson era, we define poverty differently.
So absolutely. I make
Sean is correct.
Again, he's not correct on the numbers, but again, the dispute isn't really in the numbers. It's in the fact that we have mass poverty. I think I'm being positioned as a person who's defending this. I'm not. I've been probably, if I've hit President Obama on any issue over the last 4 years, the 2 issues have been drones and poverty. So you get no disagreement from me that there's.
All right, so he's now in the 5th year of his presidency. Rand Paul gave a speech today. He was on this program yesterday, to a predominantly African-American audience of college students. He was at Howard University this morning, and he went there, and what he said, he said in the speech, he reached out to the black community, arguing that Democrats and President Obama have failed black Americans. And he said, and he urged the college audience to realize that generations of Democratic promises have left them short. And he said, today, after 4 years of the current policies, 1 in 6 Americans are in poverty more than at any other time in the past several decades. In fact, the poor have grown poorer in the past 4 years. Black unemployment is above 14%. And I'd add to that 50% youth black unemployment. Kids, and so I don't understand. 90% of the black community votes for Obama, votes for the Democrats. Why?
I think you have to. I think what's troublesome about that kind of picture that's being painted is that it implicitly suggests that somehow if we were to have someone else as president, say for example Mitt Romney or John McCain or let's say Chris Christie in 4 years or whatever, that black unemployment would be plummeting or that the nation's poverty rate would be shrinking. And I don't think that that's true. I think that's way too much to hang on the hat of the White House, or whoever's in the White House. I think that there's a set of economic structures over the last 3 decades that have led to this type of outcome. We've seen years of deregulation. You've seen outsourcing of jobs. I mean, we could lay down 5 or 6 things that fundamentally have made it difficult for people to access employment. And black unemployment in particular has been in double digits always, even when America was prosperous.
But it's gotten. Listen, you're missing the fundamental point. This is a president that said he said he was going to.
Why then do they continue to vote for the Democrats? You're making Sean's point in a way. Is none of these policies have made a difference going back 40 years to Johnson? So what Sean is asking is why would the black community continue at a 90% rate to support these policies and support Barack Obama, who happens to be part of that stream of thought and those policies?
And what I'm saying is, I'm not actually supporting Sean's point. What I'm saying is that irrespective of who's in the White House, there's a set of economic arrangements that this country relies upon, which tend to marginalize the poor. I'm saying the Democratic Party still might be the best alternative, even though the outcome.
All right, Mark, you're driving me nuts. Wait a minute. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why you're driving me nuts. You're driving me nuts because you're not addressing it. He's now in his year, and things have gotten dramatically worse in spite of promises to the contrary.
Right, but again, you're reiterating a point that I'm not disputing. Again, I agree black unemployment is in a bad place, but when I lay out the reasons why black unemployment is awful, I'm saying that under a President Romney, for example, it would be worse. The reason why blacks continue to vote at a 90% rate for Democrats is because they still believe that while they're both two wings of the same bird, one side is better than the other. What we actually need to do is radically reimagine how we think about taxation.
You're missing.
Why would it be worse under President Romney, though, Mark? If we would have tax rate cutting that would promote jobs, promote growth, that would obviously help hardworking African Americans. How can you say it would automatically be worse? I reckon it would be better. We just saw today even more tax increases in Obama's budget. How will that fuel the economy? How will that create jobs for the black community? It won't, as it hasn't done for the past 5 years.
Well, what we've seen under Republican administrations when we have cut taxes, we didn't see the trickle-down effect to the working poor. Forget the middle class for a moment. The working poor, people who didn't have access to living wages, people who needed unemployment benefits, people who needed access to social resources, people who needed funding for schools. Those things didn't trickle down even when we had those tax breaks, which were supposed to promote experimentation, promote risk-taking, promote job creation. None of that stuff hit the people at the bottom, poor black, poor white. That's the concern. That's the critique here. And I understand your point, Sean. I just don't agree with it.
All right, let me move the ball a little bit. AJ, you write for, as I said earlier, Mediaite, and you covered the special that we had Monday night with black conservatives, and we started the program with Ben Carson, and then we had a studio audience of black conservatives, and we were dealing with the issue of why is it that if you're black in America and you're conservative, it's apparently acceptable to be called every name in the book. And I noticed that your column got a very heavy amount of traffic and responses. Why do you think that?
And a very heavy amount of insults towards black conservatives or Latino conservatives who were standing up for Dr. Carson and the other town hall participants. That's what's extra shocking.
Well, I'll say
it's not shocking.
Not shocking. I'm glad you admit that, Mark. I'm glad you admit that African American conservatives do face an onslaught of insults and censorship. It isn't shocking. You're right, because we've become so used to it. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the program, but Dr. Carson, and I think this was. Dr. Carson mentioned himself that he's received letters from other black conservatives saying, we agree with you, thank you for saying what you're saying, but please keep this anonymous. Does that not frighten you?
Of course it frightens me. Here's the thing. I never want to live in a country where you can't be black and conservative and be respected. You know, I've been in this business for a very long time now, and, you know, and no one will ever say that I tear down an individual on an ad hominem level.
But here's the question. If there was an example of racism, white on black racism, and there are examples that come up, there is widespread attention and condemnation brought to it. There is institutional, I argue, racism and institutional attacks against black conservatives, and it is met with an eerie, chilling silence by the left. They do not stick up for black conservatives, from Colin Powell to Condi Rice to Clarence Thomas to modern-day conservatives to Ben Carson.
I think it might be a bit unreasonable to expect liberals to stand up for conservatives anymore.
Why don't they? Wait a minute. They only stand up. They only speak out against racism when it's white on black, but not black on black. Or
Sean, I wasn't going to say that. A magical thing happens when I finish a sentence. We come to much greater understanding. What I was going to say is the only thing they should be defending them on is the question of unfair attacks, racism, threats, and such. And to that extent, I think we haven't always done our job. The silence has been deafening. But yeah, and what I'm saying is, so take a person like Ben Carson. I disagree with Ben Carson.
Do you see a certain current? Because I do. I see an undercurrent of racism towards the black conservatives that are speaking out. I know we recently saw the Reverend Leon make the comment that the religious right wants to put blacks on the back of the bus again. And from what I'm seeing a lot of white, actually, liberals who are the ones that want to see conservative blacks back on the bus, because there is this undercurrent of know your place and shut your mouth. Do you, as an African-American, get a sense of that as well when you see these attacks? Because that's what I get from it.
You know, that's a great question, and I think it's sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. I think there's a sense of paternalism in the Democratic Party around blacks, right? And the sense is you are ours, and if you disagree with us, what do you do? I mean, for example, I supported. I didn't vote for Barack Obama in the last election. I voted Green. I voted Green Party, and there were for principled reasons, and there were people in the Democratic Party, very prominent Democrats, who said to me, "How could you do this?" And they said I was a sellout, as if I owed them my vote. Now, you may disagree with me voting for Joe Stein, that's your choice, but I don't owe the Democrats a vote. Ben Carson doesn't owe the Democrats a vote. So to that extent, I think you're right. There is a sense of paternalism, and there's a sense of ownership.
There's a little bit of hope. And by the way, this happens. You're a Cuban American, AJ. It happens in your community too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've been dealing with it for years. The attacks and insults are endless.
Yeah,
they apparently own Latinos as well.
It's really sad. All right, got to run. Thank you.